North America, WA is Washington. In the southern hemisphere, where toilets flush anti-clockwise, WA is Western Australia. In 1982 or 83, the aircraft carrier Enterprise was in port in Western Australia for 6 days, specifically Fremantle, which is the port city near Perth. In every port I visited, I met exotic, diverse people I easily learned to appreciate, but Perth was the friendliest port call I made. One reason is that in Australia I wasn't a relatively prosperous potential customer like in the PI or Mombasa, so vendors weren't in my face all the time. Before I tell you how I may have added to Australian sandwich cuisine, let me tell you about what you might misunderstand about Aussies, or America for that matter. Everybody knows Australia was a penal colony, but that doesn't mean it was founded by felons and thugs. In the 1700s, London and other areas in England and Ireland were overcrowded, disease-infested slums. One literally draconian result was called the Bloody Code, in which 222 offenses, most of which were just property crimes involving values under 5 shillings, resulted in the death penalty. Less serious offenders were transported to America first until our revolution stopped that. Then Australia became the Brits' prison colony for 80 years. Murderers, rapists, and other violent criminals weren't transported, they were hung by the neck. Maybe Aussies love America because we were both founded by pickpockets and political dissidents. Also, 38 years ago at least, the Aussies loved Americans because they remember the US was their best ally during World War II. I walked into an independent sandwich shop in Perth. This was well before Subway was ubiquitous. From the ingredients list, it seemed like they could make anything I ordered, so I asked for a BLT on white, toasted. In Australia, be specific when ordering food. Coffee and tea are both creamed unless you order black. They didn't know what BLT was. I explained possible variations, make sure the bacon's crisp, use lettuce leaf or chop it, but with a sharp knife or it will bruise and wilt quicker. Add cheese and it's a BLTC, you get the idea. The owner made one for herself too, and two other customers. A young woman with a 4 or 5-year-old girl ordered two and sat at my table at my invitation. Of course, they wanted tales of enchanted America. The little girl's name was Elfina, the only one I've ever met until recently. I have no memory of either one of them specifically, except that Elfina had red hair and that for a little while, my life seemed 100% carefree. Forever after that, I wanted to father a little girl by a woman liberal enough to let me name her Elfina. I got a red-headed son named Finian Seamus instead, and that's good too. I wish he would talk to me. This is Elfina. We met in a thrift store. I've super glued this back on twice and she kicked it off both times, so she doesn't want that. I get fidgety and isolated late at night and go somewhere I can park, watch the city lights or the moon. Some nights if the moon is horned, Elfina tells me stories about Ireland before the Troubles. She tells me one story about a passage from Larne in Northern Ireland on the ship Lord Dunsleigh. And went to South Carolina with the Murray family. There was a lot of smallpox. They lost 2 children during the journey. Once Elfina got too drunk, hitting the fermented pollen, started to go off on how Tinkerbell had forgotten her true heritage, was following a false pan, and went commercial after she changed her name. Tinkerbell used to be just Carrie. If you try to sober up a human with coffee, all you get is a wide-awake drunk. But if you give coffee to the Fae, they tend to buzz around your head reciting Gaelic poetry or singing at an insect pitch for about 30 seconds. Then they fade into the land of shadows. This behavior has been reported to cause tuberculosis and birth deformities, but there's no truth to that. Or maybe I'm just a lonely, other-directed old man with an imagination. It doesn't matter. Anyway, the next day in Perth, I walked past that same sandwich shop. There was a big new sign in the window offering the new American sandwich, the bacon, lettuce, and tomato. In smaller print, they explained there's many versions of the famous BLT, and they could make them all. I just kept walking. Elfina wasn't in there, and anyway, nobody should ever try to go back, attempt to relive one of the few absolutely perfect hours in your life. I haven't reached it yet, but I know there's going to be a time, maybe years hence, when I'll be certain there can be no more absolutely perfect hours, no matter how much buzzing around I try. That's when I'll disappear into the shadows.